Joining me now is the author and political activist, Bill Browder. Look, you've been on Vladimir Putin's hit list for years, and we're going to get to that. But let's start with the war in Ukraine. Everyone, you know Vladimir Putin. Governments are approaching you to get advice on what Vladimir Putin's endgame is. Based on what you know, what is it?
Well, everybody always asks me, what is his endgame? And the answer is there is no endgame. He is benefiting from being at war. He wants to be at war. So if you look back at the whole story, he's been a dictator for 22 years. He's stolen an obscene amount of money from the Russian people. They're not happy with it, and it's just like ready to explode at any moment. Like Tunisia, when the fruit seller set himself on fire and that started the Arab Spring. Anything like that could happen in Russia. Putin was afraid of that, and he did what every dictator does when he's afraid of his people turning against him. He started a war. And his approval ratings have shot up. It's genuine approval. And the purpose of this war is not about NATO, it's not about the EU, it's not about the Soviet Union. This is about him staying in power. Okay,
so what do you do to stop him? There's been sanctions, and we'll get to that. The Magnitsky sanctions against him, named after your lawyer murdered by Putin, Sergei Magnitsky. Do sanctions work? Will weapons work? How does it end if there's no end game?
Well, so there's two ways it could end. Either he could win and take Ukraine, in which case it doesn't end, it just carries on because he'll go to some other country, or it ends if he gets defeated in Ukraine, if the Ukrainians defeat him. If he gets defeated in Ukraine, then what happens next is the Russians say, well, wait a second, we thought you were a tough guy, but you're not so tough. We don't like that. He's not a strong man anymore. And then they'll take care of him one way or another. Otherwise, and the most likely scenario, is we end up in a situation where this goes on and on and on. And unfortunately, that's the most likely scenario. So what do we have to do in the West? We have to give the Ukrainians every bit of help so that they win this war. That means more military aid. That means real military aid. That means no-fly zones. It also means that we've got to get serious about all of the economic encirclement.
Okay, but Bill, you said that he's ready. There's no end to him. If we send a no-fly zone, the West says that could escalate to a nuclear war. You've told me he might use nuclear weapons. There's allegations to use chemical weapons. So should the West be wary of a provocation that could lead to a nuclear war?
Provocation or no provocation, he's going to do what he's going to do. We shouldn't show him any sign of weakness because that's what he's looking for right now. I mean, if we're saying that we don't want to do a no-fly zone because we think that he's going to then start a war with us, then if he says he's going to start a war with us over something else, like taking Estonia or Poland, are we just going to back down then? I mean, to use a poker analogy, he has a pair of twos, we have a full house. But we're just getting bluffed out and bluffed out every single hand here.
Yeah, but he's got a pair of nuclear twos, and I think that's a different pair. But, if you want to know how far Putin's going to go in Ukraine, how far has he gone to get you? Just take our viewers, if you can, back. 1996, you go to Russia, you become the head of the Hermitage Fund, the largest foreign investors in Russia. What happens to Sergei Magnitsky, your lawyer, and how has that basically transformed into this vendetta that Putin's got against you?
So I was exposing corruption in the companies I invested in Russia. They kicked me out. They declared me a threat to national security, raided my offices. I hired a young lawyer named Sergei Magnitsky to investigate. He discovered that the raid of my offices were a part of a scheme where they wanted to steal $230 million of taxes that I had paid to the Russian government. They succeeded in doing that. Sergei exposed them, testified against them, and he was subsequently arrested by the people he testified against, put in pretrial detention, tortured for 358 days, and then murdered in Russian police custody by officials when he was 37 years old on November 16th, 2009, a little more than 12 years ago. I made it my life's mission since his murder to go after the people who killed him, and that's led to a piece of legislation called the Magnitsky Act, which freezes the assets and bans the visas of the people who killed Sergei and the people who do similar human rights abuse. It was passed in the United States, it was passed in Canada, it's now been passed in 34 countries. In fact, it's the template which is being used to sanction the oligarchs right now in this invasion of Ukraine. Vladimir Putin is an extremely rich man. He's stolen more than $200 billion from the Russian people. and he keeps that money offshore, and he values money more than human life. And so when the Magnitsky Act came into being, he became an absolute mortal enemy of mine, or vice versa, depending on how you look at it. And he's been chasing me all over the world with death threats, kidnapping threats, arrest warrants, extradition requests, lawsuits, everything.
And you write in the book, because I want people to understand, when you're battling Vladimir Putin as you have, or as the Ukrainians have, it's not just about Russia. It's not just about the oligarchs. It's about a global money laundering scheme that you allege here, that you said the amount of dirty money that has been moved out of Russia since Putin took power is close to $1 trillion. This is about a global money laundering issue. Why is that so important to understand for governments who are trying to deal with Putin?
Well, because part of the problem is Putin. Part of the other problem is this problem is that we have a number of Westerners who are assisting Putin and his intelligence services in laundering their money and in silencing and destroying enemies abroad. I have my own case. There were American lawyers, American lobbyists, American investigators assisting the Russian security services in chasing me around America and putting me at risk for money.
Before I let you go, Bill, you just published Freezing Order, and it's a powerful book, Bill. Are you still in jeopardy? Is your family still in jeopardy?
Yeah, unfortunately, even more so, because the only thing that I think kept Vladimir Putin from really going off and killing me in broad daylight with machine guns or bombs or poison in the West was that he had one foot in the civilized world trying to woo Western politicians, trying to go to the G20, trying to be a member of the Olympics, and so on and so forth. He's given all that up now. He's put both feet in the criminal world, and that means my risk has gone up exponentially.
Bill, take care. This is a fascinating book, but as you say, it's not just about your story anymore. Governments, including the Canadian government, turning to Bill Browder for advice on how to understand and how to deal with Vladimir Putin. Bill Browder, thank you.